It started like any other episode of The View: spirited debates, bold opinions, and a usual mix of humor and controversy that kept audiences tuning in. The panelists sat comfortably under the bright studio lights, their voices overlapping as they dissected the latest headlines. But what none of them realized was that, in just a few moments, a careless remark would ignite one of the most expensive legal battles in daytime television history. As the discussion shifted to the former First Lady, Sunny Hostin leaned in, smirked, and let the words slip, a comment about Melania Trump that sent ripples of laughter through the audience. The co-hosts chuckled, thinking they had landed yet another jab that would make headlines. The cameras zoomed in, capturing their satisfied expressions as they moved on to the next topic, unaware that this moment would cost them dearly. What they didn't see, behind the scenes, the damage was already being assessed. Lawyers were reviewing footage. Phone calls were being made, and legal teams were springing into action. Melania Trump had endured years of criticism, mockery, and slander from the media, but this time she wasn't turning the other cheek. For years, public figures had assumed that she would remain silent, that she would let the comments slide, just as she had so many times before. But this was different. This time, it wasn't just an offhand remark. It was defamation. And Melania wasn't just looking for an apology. She was about to demand something much, much bigger. Legal documents were drawn up with unprecedented precision, outlining a case so strong that it left media executives scrambling. The lawsuit wasn't just about clearing her name. It was a message to the entire industry, a warning that no one, no matter how famous, would be allowed to distort the truth without consequences. As the case unfolded, the stakes skyrocketed. The dollar amount attached to the lawsuit was staggering, $900 million. The number alone sent shockwaves through the media world. The View, a show that had thrived on controversy, was now at the center of a legal hurricane they never saw coming. Sunny Hostin, once confident and outspoken, now found herself facing an uncertain future. The media had turned on her, executives were in panic mode, and viewers were questioning everything. The lawsuit wasn't just a headline, it was a turning point. And as the details of the case emerged, one thing became clear: Melania Trump was done being underestimated. Before we dive into this explosive story, make sure to like this video and subscribe to stay updated on the latest breaking stories. You won't believe how this battle unfolds. The moment the lawsuit was filed, it sent shockwaves through the media industry. Legal analysts scrambled to assess the case. Talk show hosts debated the implications. And the production team at The View was thrown into complete turmoil. They had been sued before, sure, but never on this scale. Never with nearly $1 billion at stake, and the potential to change the way media handled public figures forever. At first, some media insiders dismissed the lawsuit as a publicity stunt, assuming it would be settled quietly behind closed doors, with a discreet apology and a check written under the table. But they were wrong. As soon as the legal documents surfaced, it became clear as day that Melania Trump's legal team wasn't bluffing. The lawsuit wasn't just some vague claim of defamation. It was a meticulously crafted legal assault, detailing every false accusation, every misleading remark, and every reckless statement made on air. The case had evidence, transcripts, expert testimony, everything needed to win. Meanwhile, inside ABC headquarters, panic spread like wildfire. Lawyers were pulled into emergency meetings, high-powered executives debated damage control strategies, and public relations teams scrambled to craft a response that wouldn't make things worse. Would they stand their ground, or would they be forced to bow under pressure? With $900 million hanging in the balance, every decision carried massive consequences. As the lawsuit gained traction, public opinion started to shift. What once seemed like just another media clash quickly turned into a symbol of something much bigger. Many viewers who had once laughed along with The View's controversial takes began to question whether mainstream media had gone too far. Social media erupted with debates, with some defending the talk show's right to express strong opinions, while others argued that recklessly attacking public figures with falsehoods should come with consequences. But one person bore the brunt of the firestorm, Sunny Hostin, once a respected legal analyst. She now found herself in the crosshairs. Her critics pounced on every past comment she had made, dissecting old interviews and resurfacing past controversies. Supporters of Melania Trump pointed to Hostin's history of heated remarks, arguing that this lawsuit was a long overdue reckoning. Suddenly, the very legal expertise that made Hostin famous was being used against her. And then, something truly unexpected happened. The View began to distance itself from Hostin. The talk show, which has stood by its host through countless controversies, now seemed hesitant to defend her. Producers avoided addressing the lawsuit on air. Executives held closed-door meetings discussing the possibility of removing Hostin from the show altogether. Could The View actually sacrifice one of its own to make this lawsuit disappear? Tension behind the scenes was at an all-time high. Co-hosts whispered during commercial breaks, trying to gauge which way the wind was blowing. Some remained loyal to Hostin, while others worried about their own careers and reputations if they stood too close to a sinking ship. Meanwhile, news outlets speculated relentlessly. Would Hostin be fired? Would ABC settle? Would this lawsuit bring down one of the most controversial talk shows on television? And through it all, Melania Trump said nothing. No press conferences, no interviews, no social media statements. She didn't need to argue her case in public. Her legal team was doing all the talking in court. As the trial date crept closer, one thing was becoming impossible to ignore. This wasn't just a lawsuit anymore. This was a battle for the future of media accountability. The courtroom was packed to capacity, every seat occupied by journalists, political analysts, and curious spectators eager to witness what had become one of the most sensational defamation cases in recent history. The tension was palpable, a thick, invisible weight pressing down on a room as the judge prepared to hear the final and most crucial pieces of evidence. The air buzzed with anticipation. This was not just a legal battle. It was a defining moment in media accountability, a case that had drawn national and even global attention. Melania Trump sat at the plaintiff's table, her posture poised, her expression unreadable, yet carrying an air of quiet confidence. She had faced scrutiny for years, but today she was not the subject of debate. She was the one holding the facts. Across from her, The View's legal team exchanged uneasy glances, their polished arguments now feeling fragile in the face of mounting pressure. The defense had spent weeks trying to portray the lawsuit as frivolous, an attempt to silence free speech. But today, the world would see the truth. Then, the bombshell moment arrived. Melania's lead attorney stood, holding a flash drive containing a piece of evidence so critical, so undeniable, that it could instantly tilt the entire case in her favor. With calm precision, he walked toward the judge, inserting the drive into the court system. The screen lit up with never-before-seen recording, one that had been leaked from behind the scenes of The View. The defense team instantly stiffened, their faces shifting from skepticism to quiet panic as the footage began to play. It was a private conversation, caught during a commercial break, a moment the show's hosts never thought would see the light of day. On the screen, the unmistakable voices of the panelists filled the courtroom, speaking freely in a way that was shockingly different from their on-air personas. One of them openly admitted that the claims about Melania had been sensationalized, exaggerated for ratings, and not entirely factual. Another voice chimed in, laughing, suggesting that it didn't really matter if the allegations were true, as long as they made for good TV. The courtroom froze. For weeks, The View had passionately defended their comments, insisting that their remarks were opinions protected under the First Amendment. They had painted Melania's lawsuit as an attack on journalistic integrity. But this recording, it shattered their entire defense. This wasn't an opinion. It was a deliberate, calculated smear campaign. They had knowingly spread falsehoods to millions of viewers, all while treating it as entertainment. The judge's face hardened. The weight of the evidence was unmistakable. The murmurs among the press escalated into a stunned whisper. Legal experts scribbling notes, already formulating their analysis for the evening news cycle. For the first time in the trial, the tide had completely turned, and there was no going back. Melania's attorney seized the moment. "Your Honor," he said firmly, turning toward the judge. "This recording proves intent. It reveals that the defendants knowingly and willingly broadcast false information with the specific goal of damaging my client's reputation. This is not journalism. This is defamation." The defense lawyers looked shell-shocked. Their strategy had hinged on ambiguity, on arguing that Melania's claims were subjective, that she was interpreting their words in bad faith. But now, their own words had betrayed them. There was no room for misinterpretation. Across the room, Sunny Hostin, The View's legal analyst, sat frozen, her hands clasped together in front of her. She had spent years dissecting high-profile court cases on air, confidently explaining the law to millions of viewers. But now, she was living the very nightmare she had once analyzed. The irony was staggering. The judge turned to the defense team, his voice carrying an unmistakable finality. "Does the defense have a response?" There was silence, a long, agonizing silence. They had no argument left. The realization sank in. The case was effectively over. Melania Trump had won. It wasn't just a legal victory. It was a moment of reckoning for an industry that had long blurred the lines between commentary and defamation. The very show that had thrived on scrutinizing others was now the subject of national disgrace. Cameras flashed. Reporters rushed to draft headlines. The public was already forming their opinions. But the most shocking part? Melania Trump, who had been ridiculed, underestimated, and dismissed, was now the one holding all the power. The courtroom had just witnessed one of the most shocking revelations in recent legal history. But the fight wasn't over yet. The bombshell recording had turned the tide in Melania Trump's favor. Yet the defense team, backed by high-powered media executives, wasn't about to go down without a struggle. In a desperate attempt to salvage what little credibility they had left, The View's legal team scrambled for a counterattack. They requested an immediate recess, hoping to regroup, consult crisis strategists, and find a way, any way, to shift the narrative. But the damage was already done. Public opinion was rapidly shifting against them, and with every passing moment, the weight of their miscalculation became more evident. Outside the courthouse, a swarm of journalists and news anchors stood at the ready, microphones in hand, delivering real-time updates to an audience of millions. Every major news outlet had picked up the story, broadcasting the trial's most jaw-dropping moments across television screens and social media feeds. Meanwhile, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok were in a full-blown uproar. Hashtags like hashtag Melania wins, hashtag media accountability, and hashtag The View Exposed trended within minutes. The fallout was undeniable. Even loyal viewers of The View were expressing outrage, some feeling betrayed for having believed the misinformation for so long. Others demanded resignations, claiming that the integrity of the show had been irreparably damaged. Pundits, commentators, and media analysts rushed to dissect the trial's latest twists, some praising Melania's resilience, others questioning how a program as influential as The View had allowed itself to spiral into a scandal of this magnitude. But while the public discourse reached a fever pitch, behind closed doors, the real crisis was unfolding. Executives from The View's parent network convened an emergency meeting, scrambling to contain the fallout before it spread beyond control. Would they issue a formal apology, publicly distance himself from the hosts involved, or attempt damage control by quietly restructuring the show. Every option carried risk. But the most pressing question was, could they afford to let this case continue? Inside the courthouse, Melania remained calm, her composed demeanor contrasting sharply with the chaos unfolding beyond the courtroom walls. She had anticipated resistance. She knew how the media operated, how narratives could be twisted, and how easily reputations could be tarnished. But this time, there was no room for spin. The truth had been laid bare, and there was no taking it back. Then, an unexpected complication arose, one that no one saw coming. Melania's attorneys were approached with a staggering settlement offer from the View's parent company, an astronomical figure, hundreds of millions, offered in exchange for dropping the lawsuit and signing a strict non-disclosure agreement. The network was desperate to make this problem disappear before it set a dangerous precedent, one where high-profile figures could hold the media accountable for reckless defamation. The offer was staggering, but for Melania, this was never about money. She had already won in the court of public opinion. This case had transcended financial compensation. It was about sending a message. It was about holding the powerful to the same standards they impose on others. It was about exposing the flaws in a system that thrived on scandal, sensationalism, and misinformation. Her legal team, well aware of the stakes, advised caution. Accepting the settlement would guarantee financial victory, but rejecting it, that meant choosing to push forward, ensuring that this trial became a landmark case, one that would forever alter the balance of power between public figures and media institutions. The weight of the decision was immense. Melania paused for a moment, her eyes scanning the room as she took in the faces of those who had fought beside her. Then, with unwavering confidence, she declined the offer. The reaction was instant. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Even her own attorneys appeared momentarily stunned. The defense lawyers exchanged uneasy glances. They had been certain the money would be enough to silence her. But they had underestimated one thing. Melania Trump wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. Now, with the trial hurtling toward its final moments, the stakes had never been higher. The world was watching, and what happened next would change everything. Before we dive into the shocking final moments of this case, take a second to show your support. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss stories like this that reveal the truth behind the headlines. As the trial reached its final, climactic moments, the magnitude of Melania Trump's decision became impossible to ignore. She had turned down an astronomical settlement, one that could have ended the case quietly, choosing instead to take a public stand. For her, this wasn't just about clearing her own name. It was about sending a message, about drawing a line in the sand against the unchecked power of the media. She refused to be silenced, refused to let falsehoods dictate the narrative, and refused to accept anything less than full accountability. Inside the packed courtroom, the atmosphere was electric. The eyes of the world were on this case, and the tension was nearly unbearable. Spectators leaned forward, lawyers exchanged tense glances, and reporters scribbled furiously in their notepads. Outside, a sea of flashing cameras and microphones awaited the verdict, ready to broadcast a decision to millions in real time. Social media was ablaze with speculation. Would Melania emerge victorious, or would the media machine prove too powerful to challenge? Then the moment arrived. The judge's voice cut through the silence like a knife. He read the decision, his words carrying the weight of justice itself. Verdict in favor of the plaintiff, Melania Trump. For a split second, it was as if the room had frozen in time. Gasps filled the air. Shocked whispers spread through the gallery. Some of the View's legal team sat motionless, struggling to process the staggering blow they had just been dealt. Then came the second blow, the judge's announcement of damages. $900 million. A record-breaking sum, a financial earthquake, that sent immediate shockwaves through the industry. The implications were crystal clear. Reckless defamation was no longer going to be tolerated, no matter how influential the media source. Outside the courthouse, the consequences unfolded at a dizzying pace. The View sponsors and advertisers began withdrawing their support, unwilling to be associated with a brand that had just suffered such a monumental defeat. Network executives scrambled behind closed doors, try and contain the damage and decide how to move forward. Some hosts were immediately suspended. Others were rumored to be quietly negotiating their exits. The damage control machine had been activated at full speed, but the cracks in their foundation were impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Melania's choice to fight instead of settle had yielded rewards far beyond the courtroom. Not only had she won a legal battle, but she had also reshaped public perception. Even among those who once criticized her, there was now a begrudging respect for the resilience she had shown. Legal analysts called the case historic, arguing that it would set a new precedent for how media outlets handled their reporting. No longer could networks sling accusations without proof and expect to walk away unscathed. But for Melania, this wasn't about revenge or financial gain. It was about a much deeper victory, the victory of truth over manufactured controversy. She had spent years enduring relentless public scrutiny, often painted in whatever light the media saw fit. But today, she had taken back control of her own story. She had proven that strength wasn't always loud or aggressive. Sometimes it was quiet, dignified, and unshakable. As she exited the courthouse, cameras flashed wildly, reporters shouted questions, and the world watched in anticipation of her reaction. Would she gloat? Would she attack her detractors? But instead, she remained composed, exuding the same poise that had carried her through the storm. She turned to the press, looked directly at the cameras, and delivered a final statement, one that was as simple as it was powerful. The truth always wins. With those words, she stepped into her car, leaving behind a legacy that would ripple through the media landscape for years to come. This wasn't just a personal victory. It was a turning point, a warning to those who wield influence carelessly, and a moment of triumph for those who still believe in the power of truth. As the dust settled from one of the most shocking courtroom battles in recent history, one thing became crystal clear. This was more than just a lawsuit. This was a defining moment in the ongoing struggle between media influence and personal integrity. The staggering $900 million verdict was a loud and undeniable statement, not just of View and its hosts, but to the entire media industry. Reckless reporting, defamation, and baseless attacks were no longer something that could be swept under the rug without consequence. Melania Trump's victory wasn't just about clearing her own name. It was about holding power accountable, about forcing those with platforms to recognize the weight of their words. In a world where narratives can be shaped and distorted in seconds, she proved that truth, when pursued relentlessly, will always have the final word. But what does this mean for the future? Will media giants learn their lesson and change their approach, or will they simply double down, looking for new ways to control the narrative? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain. This case has set a precedent. It has shown that no one is above accountability, no matter how influential they may be. And now we want to hear from you. Do you think this ruling will truly change how the media operates? Will this victory be enough to deter future defamation cases? Or is this just the beginning of an even bigger battle? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want to stay updated on more eye-opening stories, don't forget to subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Your support helps us bring you the most compelling stories that the mainstream media won't tell you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.